football. It's personal between me and you, and I'm going to do you some serious harm, you big stiff idiot.
The Untouchable True School Sports Empire proudly presents something the boxing game's been missing. Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BT, and I came here to talk some boxing with the thousands of True School Sports subscribers. All right, so I had a little bit of time to process this egregious, piss poor, horrible decision that took place last night between George Kambosos and Maxi Hughes. I honestly thought that George Kambosos Jr. was exposed by Maxi Hughes. He was clinically outboxed and schooled by a textbook southpaw counterpuncher. And it really, there's been a lot of robberies over the years. I'm not really sure where this one falls, but it's up there. I mean, I have to think about it, but this robbery is definitely up there for so many reasons, and I'll get into it here. Number one, George Kambosos Jr., I understand he was once unified lightweight champion, but the popular narrative has been for a long time that it was more of a one-off thing. It was just George being at the right place at the right time. George was never really as good as the night he beat Lopez. That's what most people think, all right? And the more he fights, I mean, I didn't ever want to say that because I feel like that's taking away credit from his win, but the more time goes on, the more that's looking to be true. So George really isn't a big star like that, because if George was truly a big star like that, he wouldn't be fighting in Oklahoma. He would have fought, either in a better venue here in America, or he would have been fighting in Australia. But clearly Top Rank, who doesn't just, lose money for the sake of losing money, clearly they didn't think that, because they had him fighting in Oklahoma of all places. So they robbed Maxi Hughes for a guy who's not really a big star in the sport. And on top of that, he's not going to fight Shakur. I know him and Shakur Stevenson were ringside. I don't think he's going to fight Shakur. I personally think that if George fights anybody, he's going to fight Keyshawn Davis. I think George Kambosos can't leave boxing until Top Rank fulfills the prophecy of Keyshawn Davis knocking out George Kambosos Jr. And it is what it is there. Now, from the Maxi Hughes side of things, I've followed Maxi Hughes for a number of years. I remember many years ago, 3 years ago, when he fought Jonah Carroll. Jonah Carroll was like in a good run of form. He had just beat the brakes off of Scott Quigg. They brought Maxi in as the B-side of Lose, and he schooled Scott Quigg. And he's been on a big winning streak ever since that fight. He's beating Jonah Carroll. He's beating Kid Galahad. He's a proven, tried and true fighter on that European level, and now he had a chance to really mix it up at the world level with a known name, with a known commodity. First fight in America. He embraced being in Oklahoma. He had the cowboy hat, and I thought Maxi Hughes boxed a very, very great fight. There were times when I'd watch this fight where it seemed like I was watching David Lemieux versus Billy Joe Saunders. You had George, who was kind of a front foot dominant fighter. I saw George kind of struggling between two styles. Sometimes I saw George trying to be patient. Sometimes I saw George trying to be the aggressor. But either way, what was getting George beat consistently in this fight was the fact that he couldn't get his foot on the outside of Maxi Hughes. His foot was constantly on the inside of Maxi Hughes' foot. So most of the time when he would throw punches, he'd fall short, he'd be out of position. Maxi Hughes would counter him over the top of the left hand, or the jab, or the uppercut, or the right hook, or the uppercut to the stomach. I mean, it wasn't so much that Maxi Hughes was just landing one type of punch. He was landing many types of punches, many types of counters. He even hurt George Kambosos Jr. in the 5th round with a liver shot. So when I scored the fight live, I gave George Kambosos 2 rounds. Some people gave George Kambosos 3. Some were extra generous and gave him 4. But the popular consensus in boxing is that Maxi Hughes won this fight. And I really normally I can understand why you rob. I know George signed a contract at Top Rank, so I get it. Financially, it makes sense. Maxi Hughes got out of his contract. He's got out of his contract with Eddie Hearn. So he tried to pursued this fight, and he got it, and he got the short end of the stick. But still, George Kambosos' star power is not that crazy. And I know he's probably gonna fight Keyshawn Davis in the future, or maybe if worse comes worse, maybe he does fight Shakur. But really, who cares if Keyshawn beats George or Shakur beats George? Who gives a rat's ass? George has already been shown these last 3 fights, okay, that Lopez fight was just the right place. It was the right time, and it is what it is. I don't want to throw salt on George's career. I think George can be proud of what he's done in his career. George Kambosos Jr. is an amazing underachiever, and he should thank Peter Khan for getting him the right fights at the right time, because without Peter Khan, I don't think George would have got to where he's got to in the sport, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But I really do feel for Maxi Hughes, because this is a guy that, you know, struggled on the British level, rebuilt his career, was on a 7-fight win streak. He was once working a part-time job, okay, while he was training to box, and that's like the hardest thing to do in the world. And, you know, he would like to see a guy like that win this fight, because what people don't understand is, and I think the aspect that people forget in boxing is that when a fighter fights, yeah, he's getting paid that night, but he's not fighting for his check that night. He's fighting for the next check. So if a fighter wins, the next check is bigger. When a fighter loses, the next check is smaller. And it's just that cut and dry, and it's just that simple. And it doesn't matter if the fighter gets robbed, doesn't matter if the fighter gets a gift. If the outcome is that fighter A won the fight and fighter B lost the fight, then fighter A will be treated accordingly and fighter B will be treated accordingly from a money standpoint. And that's where it's at. So I feel for Maxi Hughes, because, you know, if he beats George, now he's got that scalp on his resume, a world name in boxing in George Kambosos Jr. And maybe he can go fight, you know, maybe he gets the chance to fight, you know, Devin or Shakur or any of the big names in the top-ranked stable. Yeah, he's probably not going to win these fights, but at least he gets the chance to showcase his skills against those guys. And most importantly, for a guy like him who showed on the British level, and even in his one fight in America, fought Oklahoma in some city I never heard of, Shawnee, Oklahoma. More importantly, if he fights those guys, he's getting a chance to make, you know, a great money for himself and ride off into the sunset. Because he's 33, he's not no spring chicken. He's not a young man in his 20s. He's a middle-aged, 30-year-old man. So it's really a shame, because I personally thought that Maxi Hughes versus George Kambosos Jr. was a great example of how to beat an overly aggressive orthodox fighter when you're a southpaw counterpuncher. Like that, it was that damn good of a boxing display. I have zero idea how anybody could give George 5 rounds or 4 rounds. Honestly, I think even 4 rounds is generous. 3 rounds is acceptable. I gave him 2. I thought George was extremely ineffective. I thought George was losing the battle ring generalship. I thought George was getting severely out counterpunched. I even think many times in the fight, George was getting outfought. It wasn't a case of, oh, a guy was too conservative and he just, you know, no, he was getting his ass whooped. Like, Max Hughes was in the pocket abusing his ass at times in the fight. So George is delusional. George Kambosos Jr. is delusional, saying he won most of the rounds. George didn't do anything. George is going to get beat up by Keyshawn Davis and ride off into the sunset. Maxi Hughes got screwed. Lou DiBella has no integrity. To hell with Lou DiBella. He's got 0 integrity in the sport of boxing. The guy always, and I'm talking about Lou DiBella, George Kambosos' promoter. The guy is always the first one to bitch and moan and complain and go on all these rants about how boxing is rotten to the core. But then when he's the beneficiary of some corruption, some foul play in his favor, that's gonna elevate his company, his bottom line, he wants to go hush hush on that. He wants to toe the line and be politically correct, and it's disgraceful. His behavior is disgraceful. George's behavior is disgraceful. Maxi Hughes beat the dog shit out of George and outboxed him. And with that being said, I have respect for Lou DiBella for what he did back in his HBO days, but I call a spade, and that's just what it is. So make of that what you will. But Maxi Hughes gets robbed in probably one of the worst robberies I've seen. September of this year will mark my 8th year covering the sport of boxing. I'd have to go back and see all the fights we've covered over the years, but I would definitely say it's one of the top 5 worst robberies ever. Just because of the fact that where Maxi Hughes was at in his career, the fact that George Kambosos doesn't have, he's not gonna make tons of money. I don't know. You guys, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Take the time to subscribe, and like I say in every single one of these videos, you can love me or you can hate me. But I'm just a kid from Daniel. So until next time, take care, guys.
Thank you for watching another video on the untouchable True Street Sports Empire. We're here at the Hatanaka Boxing Gym in Nagoya, Japan. And for more great videos just like this one, make sure you guys click right here.